All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. If you need a roof, make sure you call Ireland Contracting.
Everybody needs a roof, Rich.
There's no one better in the business. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. Gene, they not only do roofs.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, they do a bunch of things, right?
Oh, yeah. Roofing,
gutters,
siding,
windows,
dog grooming.
Dog grooming. Anything you need, contracting related, make sure you call Ireland Contracting. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. They're the best in the business. That's why they're #1 in Pittsburgh, Ireland Contracting. Give us a call right now, 412-575-2600 on the Bordas and Bordas hotline. We're headed out to the phones here in a second after I read a tweet here from Terry Dunbar. He says we're in for Yinsplosion about the Le'Veon Bell situation. And we got John up from McKees Rocks who's up first. What's up, John?
Yeah, I just want to say right now, Le'Veon Bell's an idiot. Well, five-year, $70 million contract. That's just really stupidity. I mean, he's a great football player. He's one of the best running backs we have in a long time. But I'll tell you what, he's a selfish individual. He's not about the team. He's about himself. And, you know, yeah, I hope he has a great year because it's going to let his stock rise. But, I mean, he might go to Cleveland. He might go to a team that he'll never win a Super Bowl with. And with the Steelers, I guarantee you, Steelers going to be contenders again this year, and I think we're going to make the Super Bowl for 2019. We will make the Super Bowl. We have too good of an offense. We got rid of that offensive coordinator we didn't need anymore. We're good. And if Le'Veon Bell wants to be a little crybaby, he deserves all the money, and he's a fool. And he'll never win a Super Bowl with another team. He has a chance now, but like I say, he's a stupid, selfish player.
All right, I appreciate the call, John. Fool, idiot, selfish. Used a lot. We know how he feels, John, about this this Le'Veon Bell situation. Look, I think it's hard to turn down $70 million. I know he's trying to set the market, but how much more can you get? You know, even if he does get more guaranteed money, Gene, and I think that's what this is about. I don't know if he's going to make much more than $70 million over the next 5 years.
No, I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm not going to pretend to understand it.
Yeah, it's hard to understand. It boggles my mind because he's one injury away from getting nothing. You know, he'll get 14.5 guaranteed this year. You know, if he gets injured, that stock's going to drop, and then the Steelers could get a bargain basement deal on him or something like that. I don't know who's giving him information. He says he wants to retire as a Steeler. If $70 million isn't good enough, I don't know what is. And, you know, now I guess the big question is, Gene, he's not going to be at camp. Should he be after you saw the start last year? No,
he shouldn't. You know, you can get hurt in camp just as easily. I mean, you know, Richie, everything that was true yesterday, it remains true today. We all knew what was going to happen today. It happened, and we know what's going to happen at camp, and that'll happen.
And when you look at it this way, you know, he didn't get off to a great start, but he finished as one in the NFL, and that's all he really needs to do. So if he doesn't get out to a good start, it's only hurting the Steelers. I mean, if I'm a player in the team, yeah, I would be upset. Do you think these guys are upset?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I think players side with players when it comes to money in the NFL. All the players know they're only young once. They only have 1 or 2 shots at big contracts, and they think that their comrades, you know, should get everything they can possibly get. I don't think there's any you know, I don't think that causes any dissension among the players.
Well, remember last year, DeCastro was upset about it. Pouncey talked a little bit about it, the offensive lineman. You know, why wasn't he there at camp? I mean, you could still go to camp, be a part of the team, and you know Mike Tomlin's going to take care of you and not put you in games. You're probably not going to get hurt.
Yeah, I don't remember hearing all that much about that.
All right, back out to the phone lines. We're going to go out to Isaac up in Huntington. How you doing, Isaac?
I'm doing well. How are you tonight?
Good. Thanks for calling.
Good. I appreciate taking my call. I just wanted to make a couple quick points. First of all, Le'Veon Bell is the best running back in the NFL right now. You can throw Todd Gurley and maybe an injured Johnson down in Arizona into that conversation. However, they need to pay him. He probably has an insurance policy that's going to pay him more than $70 million if he does get hurt. That's why that's not a problem for him. I do feel that he needs to be in camp just because, like you said just a minute ago, it hurt the Steelers. It hurt him last year. So I feel like you need to pay him. And they need to do an unprecedented situation is if they franchise tag him for a third year, he gets a 44% raise, which will put him up over $20 million a year.
Well, that's not going to happen, Isaac. They're not going to franchise him next year.
Well, you can say that now. However, what are you going to do? Let the best running back in football walk away after he wins a Super Bowl for you?
Well, you get a compensatory pick, and then you can draft another running back.
I apologize. He is that good.
Appreciate your call, Isaac. Yeah, you don't have to apologize. I think he's that good, but I don't think he's worth $17 million a year. You know, this is a big contract, $70 million. And you brought up insurance. I'm sure he has some kind of insurance, but I don't think it's a $7 million insurance policy. No, I don't think it's that high from what I understand, that these guys can't take out an insurance policy like that. It might be a couple million, but they're not. No one in their right mind is going to write you a policy. What would it cost for a $70 million insurance policy? Are there any insurance brokers out there that would tell me what that would cost? That it has to be a few million.
17 million.
It's probably a lot for a $70 million insurance policy. Hey, love the call, Isaac. Appreciate it. Let's go out to Paul out in Vanport. What's up, Paul? Paul in Vanport. What's going on?
Hi, Rich. Hi, Gene.
Hey.
You know what? I'm kind of feeling that we don't need him. You know what? We have James Conner, who is hungry, and I don't know who his backup is. But
well, Steve, you have Ridley and you have Samuel, who they just drafted.
Okay. You know what?
Yeah.
These players are hungry, and you know what? He didn't show up for last year's training camp, and he's not going to show up for this year's training camp. And you know what? If you don't go through training camp, you're not a team player. It's all about me.
Well, he doesn't want to get hurt, and then it's, you know, but the one thing about that is if he goes to training camp and signs, I appreciate your call, Paul, but if he goes to training camp and signs, he's going to get his money. You know, if he goes and shows up, he's going to get his money. If he gets hurt in Florida working out, he's not going to get the $14 million.
It doesn't make sense, I think.
No, I think that's what we keep saying. This doesn't make sense. I keep scratching my head and not understanding this whole thing with the Le'Veon Bell situation. Hey, look, you know, franchise him this year. You get 1 year of the group together, and then next year you move on. You get a compensatory pick, draft a running back in the first round, use some of that money on defense. I don't know about you, but I don't think Conner, Ridley, and Samuel would be the answer to replace Le'Veon Bell. You got to go out and get someone, draft someone high for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Those players are hungry, but they can be as hungry as they want to be. They're not Le'Veon Bell.
No, I can't name one other running back in the NFL that's Le'Veon Bell. I mean, you got some good ones. Freeman, he brought up Gurley, McCoy, a few others that are pretty good, but they're not Le'Veon Bell. But they also make half less than Le'Veon Bell, half the money, and you could use some of that money to get a linebacker.
In theory, yep.
Right? All right, we got to take a break. Back with more of your phone calls. Maybe some of your tweets coming up next. Stay right there on the Island Contracting Nightly Sports Call.